Part 1. The Scars of Survival. The maintenance corridor of the Apex Dominion hummed with the sound of 1,000 systems working together. Jisoo knelt beside an access panel, her scarred hands moving with practiced efficiency through the tangle of wires and circuits. The burns on her skin were old now, 5 years healed but never fading. The tissue was thick and rough, colored in patches of pink and white that stretched from her fingertips to her wrists. Some days they ached. Today was one of those days. She didn't mind the pain. It reminded her that she was alive, and so were the 3,000 colonists who would have died if she hadn't reached into that burning reactor core. The diplomatic vessel was massive, bigger than any ship Jisoo had seen in her 12 years of service. It belonged to the Valthari Empire, the rulers of this part of the galaxy. They were proud creatures, these Valthari, tall and covered in scales that shimmered like polished metal. Some had 4 arms, others had tails that could crush steel. All of them were predators, descended from apex hunters on their homeworld. They looked at humans the way a wolf might look at a rabbit. Jisoo had learned not to care what they thought. She did her job, kept her head down, and counted the days until her contract ended. "What is that thing doing here?" A voice boomed above her. Jisoo didn't look up. She recognized the voice. General Vorak, commander of the Valthari Fleet's 3rd Division. She had seen him strutting through the corridors before, his forearms gesturing wildly as he barked orders at his subordinates. "I'm repairing the power relay." "Sir?" Jisoo said calmly, still focused on her work. "I wasn't talking to you," Vorak said. "I was talking about you." Jisoo heard laughter from the other Valthari in the corridor. She closed her eyes for a moment, took a breath, and continued working. The relay needed 3 more connections before it would function properly. Heavy footsteps approached. A shadow fell over her workspace. Vorak leaned down, his massive head blocking the light. His eyes were yellow with vertical slits like a serpent's. When he spoke, she could smell something sharp and metallic on his breath. "Look at those hands," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Burned like overcooked meat. This is what happens to soft-skinned species. They break so easily." One of his subordinates, a female Valthari with crimson scales, stepped closer. "Why does the Empire even allow humans to serve? They're fragile, weak." "Because they work cheaply," Vorak said, straightening up. "And because they're too weak to be a threat. Look at her. She can barely hold her tools with those ruined hands." Jisoo's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Her hands moved steadily, connecting the 3rd wire. 2 more to go. Did you burn them cooking?" Vorak asked, his tone mocking. "Or did you touch something you weren't supposed to?" Humans are always touching things they don't understand. More laughter. Jisoo finished the 4th connection. 1 more. "No warrior of the Valthari would bear such scars," the female officer said. "Our scales protect us. We are built for battle, for conquest. These soft creatures are built for nothing." Jisoo connected the final wire and closed the panel. The relay hummed to life, its indicator lights turning from red to green. She stood up, gathering her tools, and finally met Vorak's eyes. "Is there anything else you need, sir?" she asked. Her voice was steady, neutral. Vorak stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "No, go back to whatever hole they keep your kind in." Jisoo nodded and turned to leave. Her legs wanted to shake, but she wouldn't let them. Not here, not in front of these people. She had taken 3 steps when a small voice spoke up. "Were you forged in battle too?" The corridor went silent. Jisoo turned around. Standing behind Vorak was a child, small even by Valthari standards. His scales were soft and downy, still the pale gold color of youth. He couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. His eyes were large and curious, fixed on Jisoo's hands. "Haru," Vorak said sharply. "Come away from there," but the child didn't move. He stepped forward, around Vorak's leg, and looked up at Jisoo with complete fascination. "Your hands," the child said. "They look like my father's back. He has scars from the Battle of Kranis. He says they're marks of honor. Are yours from battle?" Jisoo felt every eye in the corridor on her. She recognized the child now. Prince Haru, son of Emperor Taman, the heir to the entire Valthari Empire, was standing in front of her, asking about her scars. She knelt down slowly, bringing herself to the child's eye level. Up close, she could see that his scales were indeed soft, not yet hardened into the armor that adult Valthari wore. He smelled like clean water and something sweet. "In a way, yes," Jisoo said quietly. "I was." Haru's eyes widened. "What kind of battle?" Jisoo glanced up at Vorak. The general's face was unreadable, but his forearms were tense. The other officers looked uncomfortable. No one seemed to know what to do. A battle against fire, Jisoo said, looking back at Haru. And against time. There were people who needed help, and I was the only one who could reach them. Did you win? Haru asked. Jisoo looked down at her hands, turning them over. The scars caught the light from the corridor panels, showing every ridge and valley of damaged tissue. Yes, she said. I won. The people lived. Then you're a warrior, Haru said with certainty. Like my father. Haru, that's enough, a new voice said. A female Valthari approached, older than the others, with deep blue scales and elaborate ceremonial markings. You shouldn't bother the workers. I'm not bothering her, Haru protested. I'm learning. Father says a good emperor learns from everyone. The older Valthari, who Jisoo guessed was some kind of tutor or governess, took Haru gently by the shoulder. Come. Your lessons are waiting. Haru allowed himself to be led away, but he kept looking back at Jisoo. Just before he turned the corner, he raised one small hand and waved. Jisoo waved back. When the prince was gone, Vorak turned to her with an expression that might have been anger or confusion. You will not speak to the prince again, he said. Do you understand? Yes, sir, Jisoo said. Your kind has no business with royalty. You exist to serve nothing more. I understand. Sir? Vorak stared at her for another moment, then turned and strode away, his officers following behind him like a school of fish following a shark. Jisoo stood alone in the corridor, her tool bag hanging from her shoulder. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up with her. She looked down at them, at the scars that had caused so much mockery. She remembered the heat of the reactor core, the way her gloves had melted, the smell of her own skin burning, the screaming of the alarms and her own voice shouting instructions to the other engineers. The choice she had made in that moment, endure this pain or let 3,000 people die. It hadn't felt like a choice at all. Jisoo took a deep breath and started walking toward the crew quarters. Behind her, the power relay hummed efficiently, performing exactly as it should. She had done her job well, as always. Her hands ached. But she had stopped noticing that a long time ago. In a distant part of the ship, Prince Haru was asking his tutor questions about human biology, about their skin and their pain tolerance and why they scarred so easily. The tutor had no good answers. None of the Valthari did. That night, Haru asked his father, Emperor Taemin, about the human woman with the burned hands. Taemin listened to his son's story and said nothing for a long time. Finally, the Emperor spoke. Scars are proof of survival, my son. But we Valthari earn ours in conquest, in dominance over others. This human earned hers differently. How? Haru asked. Taemin looked out at the stars through the viewport of his chambers. I don't know, he admitted. And that troubles me. Part 2. The human way. 3 days passed before Jisoo saw Prince Haru again. She was working in one of the smaller maintenance bays, replacing a faulty cooling unit when she heard the sound of small feet running down the corridor. There you are. Haru's voice echoed in the metal space. Jisoo turned to find the young prince standing in the doorway, slightly out of breath. Behind him stood 2 massive Valthari guards looking uncomfortable and uncertain. Your Highness, Jisoo said, setting down her wrench. You shouldn't be in this area. It's not safe. Why not? Haru walked in, looking around with interest at the exposed pipes and machinery. Because if something breaks while I'm working on it, people can get hurt. Jisoo gestured to the cooling unit. This system carries liquid nitrogen. If it ruptures, everything in this room freezes in seconds. But you're in here, Haru pointed out. That's my job. I know the risks. Haru considered this. That's what warriors do. They know the risks and do the dangerous things anyway. One of the guards stepped forward. Prince Haru, we should return to your quarters. The Emperor will be concerned. I'm learning, Haru said firmly. Father wants me to learn about the ship. This woman is teaching me. The guards exchanged glances. Neither seemed willing to physically remove the young prince from the room. Jisoo sighed quietly. What do you want to know, Your Highness? Haru's face brightened immediately. He pointed at her hands. Your scars. You said they came from battle with fire. Tell me the story. Jisoo hesitated. The guards were listening. Everything she said would probably be reported back to someone important. But Haru was looking at her with such genuine curiosity that she found it hard to refuse. All right, she said, but I need to keep working while I talk. This cooling unit won't fix itself. I can help, Haru said eagerly. No, Jisoo and both guards said at the same time. Haru looked disappointed but sat down on a supply crate, his tail curling around his feet. Then just tell me the story. Jisoo turned back to the cooling unit and picked up her wrench. It happened 5 years ago. I was working on a colony ship called the Morning Star. We were carrying 3,000 people to a new settlement on the outer rim. Why were you going there? Haru asked. Because humans need space to grow. Earth is crowded and we've learned to live among the stars. Valthari don't need colony ships, Haru said proudly. We take the worlds we want. I know, Jisoo said simply. She didn't want to argue politics with a child. Anyway, we were 3 weeks from our destination when the reactor began to fail. She remembered that day with perfect clarity. The alarms, the way everyone had looked at her, at the other engineers waiting for them to fix it, the temperature readings climbing higher and higher. The reactor core was damaged, Jisoo continued. We're still not sure how. Maybe a micrometeor strike, maybe a manufacturing defect. It doesn't matter. What mattered was that it was going to explode and there was no time to evacuate 3,000 people. Haru leaned forward. What did you do? 4 of us went into the reactor chamber. Me and 3 other engineers. We had emergency suits, but they were only designed for short exposure. The heat inside was... Jisoo paused, searching for the right words. Imagine standing next to a star. That's what it felt like. Why didn't you send robots? Haru asked. The radiation had fried all the electronic systems. It had to be done manually. Your suits protected you, one of the guards said. It wasn't a question. For a while, Jisoo said. We had maybe 10 minutes before the heat would cook us alive, even through the suits. We needed 15 minutes to complete the repairs. She loosened a bolt on the cooling unit, removed it, and reached inside to disconnect a damaged component. Her scarred fingers were less sensitive than they used to be, which sometimes made delicate work harder. But they didn't hurt as much when she touched hot surfaces. We worked as fast as we could, Jisoo said. We sealed the containment breach, rerouted the cooling systems, and stabilized the reaction. But the heat kept building. After 8 minutes, my gloves started to melt. Haru made a small sound. Melt? The material broke down. I could feel the heat getting through. But I couldn't stop. If I stopped, everyone would die. Jisoo pulled out the damaged component and set it aside. So I kept working. My hands started to burn. The pain was... There aren't words for it. Like holding hot coals. Like being on fire. But I kept my hands steady and finished the job. Did everyone live? Haru asked quietly. Everyone lived, Jisoo confirmed. All 3,000 people. We got the reactor stable and made it to the colony. The other 3 engineers were okay. I was the only one whose gloves failed completely. Because you were the closest to the core, the second guard said. It wasn't a question either. Jisoo nodded. Someone had to be. Haru was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thoughtful. Among my people, scars are marks of victory. When a warrior defeats an enemy, when they conquer a world, they earn scars. They wear them with pride because they show dominance. I know, Jisoo said, but your scars aren't like that. You didn't defeat an enemy. You saved your own people. Yes, why? Haru asked. Why would you hurt yourself to save others? Were they your family? Jisoo installed the new cooling component and began reconnecting the power feeds. Most of them were strangers. I knew maybe 50 people on that ship personally. The rest I had never met, then why? Haru pressed. Balthari don't risk themselves for strangers. We fight for our clan, for our blood, but you're not related to those people. Jisoo tightened the final connection and tested the unit. It hummed to life, cold air beginning to flow through the system. She turned to face Haru fully. Because they were people, she said simply. Because I could help, and they couldn't help themselves. Because if I didn't do it, 3,000 lives would end. Fathers, mothers, children, dreams and futures, all gone. But you could have died, Haru said, yes. And you chose to risk it anyway. For strangers, yes. Haru looked down at his own hands. They were smooth and unmarked, protected by developing scales. I don't understand. That's okay, Jisoo said gently. It's hard to explain. Humans, we're not the strongest species. We're not the fastest or the smartest. We're not natural predators like your people, but we have something else. What? We have each other. We survive because we help each other, because we choose to. A human alone is weak, but humans together, working for each other, sacrificing for each other, We can do incredible things. One of the guards spoke up, his voice uncertain. This is not the way of warriors. No, Jisoo agreed. It's not. It's the human way. Haru was quiet for a long time. Finally, he stood up from the crate. Thank you for telling me the story. You're welcome, Your Highness. As Haru turned to leave with his guards, he paused at the doorway. Shizu? It was the first time he had used her name. Yes? Your scars are marks of honor, too. Maybe more than my father's. He conquered others. You conquered yourself. Before Jisoo could respond, the prince was gone, his guards following quickly behind him. Jisoo stood alone in the maintenance bay, the cooling unit humming softly beside her. She looked down at her hands, turning them over slowly. The scars caught the light, familiar and strange at the same time. She had never thought of it as conquering herself. She had just thought of it as doing what needed to be done. That evening, in the crew quarters, Jisoo sat with the other humans assigned to the diplomatic vessel. There were 12 of them total, scattered across different departments. Mina, the shuttle pilot, was the first to speak. I heard the little prince has been following you around. Word travels fast, Jisoo said. Word always travels fast when it involves humans and Valthari royalty, Daehyun said. The xenobiologist looked nervous, as he usually did. This could be bad, Jisoo. The general already hates us. Vorak hates everyone, Sujin said. The former soldier was cleaning her nails with a small knife, looking unconcerned. That's just his personality. Still, Daehyun insisted, drawing attention to ourselves is dangerous. We're here to work, not to interact with the ruling family. I'm not trying to draw attention, Jisoo said. The prince asked me questions. What was I supposed to do, ignore him? Maybe, Daehyun said, then wilted under Sujin's glare. I'm just saying, be careful. I'm always careful, Jisoo said, but she wondered if that was true. Careful people didn't reach into burning reactor cores. Careful people didn't tell stories about human sacrifice to alien princes. Careful people kept their heads down and their mouths shut. Maybe she had never been careful at all. Part 3. The Test. The attack came during the night cycle when most of the ship's inhabitants were sleeping. Jisoo was dreaming about Earth, about rain falling on green hills when the alarms woke her. The sound was wrong. Not the regular maintenance alerts she was used to, but something sharp and urgent that made her heart race before she was fully conscious. She rolled out of her bunk and grabbed her work suit, pulling it on while the other humans in the quarters were still blinking awake. What's happening? Mina asked, fumbling for her boots. I don't know, Jisoo said. But it's not good. The intercom crackled to life. A Valthari voice, tight with tension, spoke in the common trade language. All crew to emergency stations. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. The lights shifted to emergency red. Through the small viewport in their quarters, Jisoo could see flashes of weapons fire in the darkness of space. Sujin was already dressed, her military training evident in how quickly she moved. Pirates? Has to be, Daehyun said, his hands shaking as he tried to seal his suit. The summit. They knew all the important species would be gathered here. Stupid of them, Mina said, pulling her hair back. This ship has more firepower than a small fleet. The ship shuddered. Something had hit the hull. The lights flickered. Maybe not stupid enough, Jisoo said. Come on. We need to get to our stations. They ran through the corridors with dozens of other crew members, all heading to their assigned emergency positions. The Valthari moved with practiced efficiency, their long strides eating up distance. The humans had to work to keep pace. Jisoo's station was the main engineering deck, deep in the heart of the ship. She arrived to find chaos. Screens showed damage reports flooding in. The engineering crew, mostly Valthari with a few other species mixed in, were shouting at each other in multiple languages. The head engineer, a four-armed Valthari named Kalen, spotted Jisoo. You, human. Check the power distribution systems. Something's wrong with the secondary grid. Jisoo moved to the console and began running diagnostics. The numbers that appeared made her blood run cold. Sir, she called out, we have multiple breaches in the lower decks. Hull integrity is at 60% and falling. Can you seal them remotely? No, sir. The blast doors are damaged. Someone will need to go down there and seal them manually. Kalen's scales rippled with agitation. How bad is the radiation? Jisoo checked the sensors. Bad, 20,000 rads and climbing. The coolant systems are ruptured. A hush fell over the engineering deck. 20,000 rads was a death sentence for most species. The Valthari, for all their physical strength, had evolved on a world with minimal radiation. Their bodies couldn't handle it. "We'll send repair drones," Kalen said. "The electromagnetic interference is too strong," another engineer reported. "The drones won't function in that environment." Another impact shook the ship. More alarms blared. "Life support is failing in the central sections," someone shouted. "We need those breaches sealed now, or we're all dead in 2 hours." Kalen stood frozen, his forearms twitching with indecision. To send his crew into that radiation was to send them to die, but not to send them was to doom everyone on the ship. Jisoo pulled up a detailed scan of the affected areas. Her mind was already calculating, planning, remembering her training. She looked at the radiation levels again and made a decision. "I'll go," she said. Every head on the deck turned toward her. "What?" Kalen said. "I'll go down there. I can seal the breaches manually." "You'll die," Kalen said flatly. "Those radiation levels will kill you in minutes." "Not as quickly as they'll kill you," Jisoo said. She pulled up a comparison chart on her screen. "Humans evolved on Earth. Our planet has higher radiation than most worlds. Our cells can handle more damage before they fail. I won't last long down there, but I'll last longer than anyone else on this ship." "She's right." Daehyun's voice came through the comm system. He was in the medical bay. "Human radiation resistance is significantly higher than Valthari. She might survive long enough to complete the repairs." "Might," Kalen repeated. "It's better than definitely dying up here," Jisoo said. Before Kalen could respond, Mina's voice came through the comm. "If Jisoo's going, I'm going with her. You'll need someone to carry equipment. And you'll need security," Sujin added. "The automated defense systems are malfunctioning. They're firing on anything that moves in the lower decks." Jisoo felt a surge of warmth toward her friends mixed with fear. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, we do," Mina said. "Human way, remember? We're stronger together." Kalen looked at the 3 humans, then at the damage report still flooding his screens. "You understand this is almost certainly fatal." "We understand," Jisoo said. "And you're volunteering anyway." "Yes." Kalen was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Then may the stars light your path, go." The 3 humans geared up in the staging area. They put on the heaviest radiation suits available, but even those would only buy them time. Jisoo checked the seals on her gloves twice, remembering the last time protective gear had failed her. "Estimated exposure time?" Mina asked, her voice tight despite her brave words. 30 minutes, Jisoo said. "Maybe 40 if we're lucky. The work will take at least 25. "So we cut it close," Sujin said, checking her weapon. "Story of my life." They entered the lift that would take them down to the damaged decks. As the doors closed, Jisoo caught a glimpse of the engineering crew watching them. The Valthari looked at them with expressions that might have been respect or pity or both. The lift descended. With each level, the lights grew dimmer and the temperature dropped. When the doors opened on the lower deck, they were met with a scene of devastation. The corridor was twisted and torn, metal peeling away from the walls like skin. Fires burned in patches, fed by oxygen leaking from ruptured pipes. The air itself seemed to shimmer with heat and radiation. "Stay close," Jisoo said, stepping out into the nightmare. "And watch for the defense turrets." They moved through the ruined corridors carefully. Jisoo led them to the first breach, a jagged hole in the hull where metal had been ripped away by weapons fire. Through the gap she could see the stars. She pulled out her welding torch and began to work. The heat added to the already unbearable temperature. Sweat poured down her face inside the helmet. Her hands, even through the thick gloves, could feel the warmth of the metal. "Contact," Sujin said calmly. "Defense turret corridor 3. Weapons fire echoed through the damaged section. Sujin returned fire with precision, taking out the malfunctioning turret before it could lock onto them. Jisoo kept welding. The first breach took 8 minutes to seal. Her dosimeter was already showing dangerous levels. 2 more breaches, Mina said, reading the map on her datapad. "This way." They found the second breach quickly. This one was larger, and a coolant pipe had ruptured nearby, spraying toxic chemicals into the air. Jisoo had to work while being careful not to touch the pooling coolant. Her hands were shaking now. The radiation was affecting her, making her feel sick and dizzy. She pushed through it, forcing her hands to stay steady. Behind her, Sujin fought off 2 more defense turrets while Mina held a damaged support beam that threatened to collapse. "How long?" Mina grunted, straining under the weight. 3 more minutes, Jisoo said. "Make it 2, Mina said. I can't hold this much longer. Jisoo worked faster, her scarred fingers gripping the welding torch despite the pain. The old burns on her hands were nothing compared to this. Her whole body felt like it was on fire from the inside out. She finished the weld. Done, move! Mina released the beam and they ran for the final breach. Jisoo's legs felt weak. Her vision was blurring at the edges. The third breach was the worst. It was a massive tear in the hull, and the structural damage around it was severe. Jisoo could see that it would take at least 15 minutes to seal properly. She checked her dosimeter. They had been down here for 23 minutes already. We're not going to make it. Daehyun's voice came through the comm, monitoring their vital signs from the medical bay. Your radiation exposure is too high. You need to evacuate now. If we evacuate now, everyone dies, Jisoo said. She started welding. Her hands were burning again. The sensation was familiar, almost nostalgic. The gloves were holding, but the heat was getting through. She wondered if this was how she would die, doing the same thing that had scarred her the first time. Jisoo, Mina said softly. Daehyun's right. We're dying. We're all dying, Jisoo said, not stopping her work. The question is whether we die alone or with everyone else. Soojin stepped up beside her. Then we die finishing the job. Jisoo didn't cry. She didn't have the energy for it. She just kept welding one line at a time, sealing the breach that would save thousands of lives. Above them, on the bridge, General Vorak watched the sensor displays. He saw the 3 human life signs deep in the ship, surrounded by lethal radiation. He saw how slowly they were moving now, how their vital signs were failing. They're still down there, Emperor Taemin said beside him. Yes, Vorak said. They're going to die. Yes, and they know it. Vorak said nothing. He just watched the 3 small signals on his screen. 3 humans working in conditions that would have killed him in minutes. In the lower decks, Jisoo finished the final weld. The breach was sealed. The structural integrity was restored. Life support began to flow through the ship again. Part 4, Respect Earned. The medical bay was chaos. Doctors and nurses rushed between beds, treating injuries from the attack. Falthari warriors with broken scales, technicians with burns, officers with concussions. The smell of antiseptic and something sharp like ozone filled the air. Jisoo lay on a medical bed with Mina on one side and Soojin on the other. All 3 were connected to machines that beeped steadily, monitoring their failing bodies. Taehyun stood nearby, his face pale as he watched the medical team work. Radiation sickness, the head doctor, a Valthari female named Yuna, said quietly. Severe, I'm amazed you survived the exposure at all. How long do they have? Daehyun asked. Yuna didn't answer immediately. She adjusted the IV drip going into Jisoo's arm. I don't know. Humans are more resistant to radiation than we are, but these levels, days maybe, possibly hours. Can you save them? Daehyun's voice cracked. I can try, but I've never treated radiation exposure this severe in any species. Jisoo tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. Yuna noticed and held a cup of water to her lips. Jisoo managed a few sips. The breaches, Jisoo whispered. Are they sealed? Yes, Yuna said. Life support is restored. The ship is stable. The pirates have been driven off. Good, Jisoo said, and closed her eyes. She could hear voices around her, distant and echoing. Yuna was giving orders to her staff. Daehyun was asking technical questions about treatment options. Mina was making a joke, her voice weak but still trying to be brave. Soojin was quiet, but Jisoo could hear her breathing, steady and controlled even now. Time passed strangely. Sometimes Jisoo was aware, sometimes she drifted. She felt hot, then cold, then hot again. Her hands hurt with a deep, bone-level pain that was worse than the reactor burns had ever been. She dreamed about Earth again. About green hills and rain. About her mother's face. About the colony ship, and the 3,000 lives she had saved. About whether those people ever thought about the engineer who had burned her hands for them. When she opened her eyes again, the medical bay was quieter. Most of the other patients had been treated and released. Only the 3 humans remained, along with a few Valthari with more serious injuries. Someone was standing beside her bed. Jisoo turned her head slowly and saw Emperor Taemin. The Valthari Emperor was massive up close, easily twice her height even when she was standing. His scales were the deep bronze color of old battle armor, marked with scars that spoke of a lifetime of violence. His eyes were golden and sharp, missing nothing. "Your Majesty," Jisoo tried to say, but it came out as a whisper. "Don't speak," Taemin said. His voice was deep, resonant, like distant thunder. "Save your strength." Jisoo nodded slightly. She waited for him to say whatever he had come to say. Taemin looked at her for a long moment. "I came to see the humans who saved my ship. Who saved my son, Prince Haru." Jisoo hadn't thought about him during the crisis. The young prince had been somewhere on the upper deck, safe from the breaches. But he would have died too if the life support had failed. "My advisors told me what you did," Taemin continued. "They explained the radiation levels, the time you spent exposed, the certainty of death. And they explained that you volunteered, that you went knowing you would die." He paused, his tail swishing slowly behind him. "I have commanded warriors for 300 years. I have led armies across a dozen worlds. I have seen bravery in all its forms. But I have never seen anything like this." Jisoo's throat was too tight to speak. She just looked at him. "You saved 3,000 lives once before," Taemin said. "Today you saved 8,000. The ship's full crew, the diplomatic delegations, the staff, everyone, you saved them all." He was quiet for a moment. "Including my son. Just doing my job," Jisoo managed to whisper. "No," Taemin said firmly. "This was not your job. Your job was to maintain systems, to repair what breaks, not to walk into death itself. That was a choice." Before Jisoo could respond, she heard heavy footsteps approaching. General Vorak appeared, his forearms held stiffly at his sides. He looked uncomfortable, which was unusual for him. "Emperor," Vorak said, bowing slightly. Taemin acknowledged him with a nod. "General." Vorak turned to look at Jisoo. His yellow eyes, which had been so full of contempt days ago, were different now. There was something in them that might have been shame. "I came to apologize," Vorak said. The word seemed to pain him. "I mocked your scars. I called you weak. I was wrong." Jisoo tried to sit up, but Yuna appeared and gently pushed her back down. "Stay still," the doctor ordered. Vorak stepped closer to the bed. "Among my people there is a tradition. When a warrior recognizes another warrior's honor, they perform the scar gift." He extended one of his 4 hands, palm up. "It is a gesture of respect, of acknowledgement that you are forged in the same fires we are." He lowered his head, a gesture of submission that Jisoo had never seen a Valkyrie make to a human. "I see now that you are not weak," Vorak said. "You are forged in a fire we do not know, a fire that burns from the inside. You choose to suffer for others. You choose death over failure. These are not the actions of a weak creature." Jisoo lifted her damaged hand, trembling with the effort. Vorak took it gently in his massive palm. His scales were warm against her burned skin. "I was blind," Vorak said. "Forgive me." "Nothing to forgive," Jisoo whispered. "You didn't know." "I should have known," Vorak said. "A warrior recognizes warriors. I failed in this." He released her hand and stepped back. Other Valthari were gathering now, drawn by the presence of their emperor. They lined the corridor outside the medical bay, looking in at the 3 humans who had saved them all. Prince Haru pushed through the crowd, his small form squeezing between the legs of the adult Valthari. His tutor tried to hold him back, but he wriggled free and ran to Jisoo's bedside. "You're alive," Haru said, relief clear in his voice. "They said you might die." "Still might," Jisoo said, managing a weak smile. "But not yet." Haru looked at her hands, which were wrapped in medical bandages. Already blood was seeping through in places where the radiation burns were worst. "You got new scars?" Haru said softly. "Like your old ones, but bigger." "Yeah," Jisoo said. "Why do you keep doing this?" Haru asked, and there were tears in his golden eyes. "Why do you keep hurting yourself for others?" Jisoo looked at the young prince, at his soft scales and innocent face. She thought about how to explain it in a way he would understand. "Because someone has to," she said finally. "Because if people like me don't step forward, then who will? The strong can choose to protect the weak. That's what makes us strong." "But you are weak," Haru said, then immediately looked ashamed. "I mean your body. You're not as strong as us." "That's true," Jisoo said. "But strength isn't just about muscles or scales. It's about what you choose to do when everything hurts and you're scared and you want to run away. It's about staying anyway." Haru wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I want to be strong like you." "You will be," Jisoo said. "You already are. You came to me when others mocked me. That took courage." Taemin placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Come, Haru, let them rest." As the emperor and his son turned to leave, Taemin paused. Dr. Yuna, whatever resources you need to save these humans, you have them. No cost is too high. Yes, Your Majesty, Yuna said, bowing. The crowd slowly dispersed, the Valthari returning to their duties, but many of them glanced back at the medical bay, at the 3 humans lying on beds wrapped in bandages, connected to machines that fought to keep them alive. That night, as Jisoo drifted between sleep and waking, she heard Yuna talking to Daehyun. Their cell regeneration is remarkable, Yuna was saying. The radiation should have killed them by now. But their bodies are fighting back in ways I've never seen. Humans are stubborn, Daehyun said. It's what we do best. It's more than that, Yuna said. It's like their bodies refuse to quit. They should be dead. By all medical logic, they should be dead. But they're stabilizing instead. They're not ready to die yet, Daehyun said simply. They have more work to do. Jisoo smiled in the darkness. Daehyun understood. They all did. The work was never done. There were always more breaches to seal, more lives to save, more fires to walk into. That was the human way. On the bridge, Vorak stood at his station watching the stars. One of his officers approached him cautiously. Sir, are you well? Vorak was quiet for a long time. I have conquered 7 worlds, he said finally. I have led fleets into battle against enemies that outnumbered us 10 to 1. I have earned every scar on my body through blood and fire. Yes, sir, you are a great warrior. But those humans, Vorak continued, they walked into certain death for people they didn't know. They burned themselves alive for strangers, and they didn't hesitate. He turned to look at his officer. What does that make them? The officer had no answer. Greater warriors than I will ever be, Vorak said quietly, and I am only now beginning to understand why. In his chambers, Emperor Taemin stood before a viewport, looking out at the vastness of space. Beside him, Haru was supposed to be sleeping, but the young prince was sitting up in his bed. Father, Haru said, what Jisoo did today, that's what it means to be human. Taemin thought about the question carefully. I think, he said slowly, that what she did today is what it means to be the best of what any species can be. Human, Valthari, or otherwise. To choose others over yourself. To face death for life. Part 5. A new alliance 6 weeks passed. The Apex Dominion remained in orbit while repairs were completed, and the diplomatic summit resumed. The story of the 3 humans who had walked into lethal radiation spread through the ship, then through the fleet, then through the entire Valthari Empire. Jisoo spent the first 3 weeks in the medical bay. Dr. Yuna worked around the clock to save her and the others, using treatments that had never been tried on humans before. Slowly, impossibly, they recovered. Their bodies proved more resilient than anyone had expected. When Jisoo finally left the medical bay, she walked on her own. Her hands were wrapped in clean bandages. Underneath, the new scars were still raw and red, layered over the old ones. She wondered if there would come a day when her hands were more scar tissue than original skin. The corridors of the ship were different now. Valthari crew members stopped when they saw her. Some nodded respectfully. Some touched their chests in a salute usually reserved for high-ranking warriors. Some simply stared. Jisoo made her way to the observation deck, a large room with floor-to-ceiling viewports that showed the stars. She needed to see something beautiful after weeks of staring at medical equipment. She wasn't alone. Emperor Taemin stood at the viewport, his massive form silhouetted against the cosmos. Your Majesty, Jisoo said, starting to bow. Don't, Taemin said. You shouldn't bow to anyone anymore. Not after what you've done. Jisoo approached the viewport and stood beside him. Together they looked out at the stars. I've been thinking, Taemin said after a long silence, about my empire, about how we've built it, about what strength really means. Your Majesty, we Valthari have ruled through conquest for 1,000 years. We take what we want. We dominate the weak. We measure ourselves by how many worlds we control, how many species bow to us. He turned to look at her. But you have shown me a different kind of strength. One that doesn't conquer. One that endures. I'm just an engineer, Jisoo said. No, Taemin said firmly. You're more than that. You and your people have survived in a galaxy that should have crushed you. You're not the strongest. You're not the fastest. You can't match our weapons or our warriors. And yet you persist. You thrive. You hold on when anyone else would let go. He gestured to the stars. I have been thinking about what humanity could teach the Empire. About what we might learn if we stopped treating you as servants and started treating you as equals. Jisoo felt her breath catch. Equals? I am proposing to the Council that humanity be elevated from vassal status to allied species. Full autonomy for your worlds. Representation in the Imperial Senate. Equal trade rights. Taemin looked at her. And I want you to be the first human ambassador to the Valthari Empire. Jisoo stared at him. Your Majesty, I'm not qualified. I'm not a politician or a diplomat. I fix machines. You fix more than machines, Taemin said. You fixed something in us. You showed us that we've been measuring strength wrong. That's more valuable than any political skill. Before Jisoo could respond, the door to the observation deck opened. General Vorak entered, followed by several other high-ranking Valthari officers. Vorak's expression was serious. Emperor, Vorak said, the Council has reached a decision on your proposal. Taemin turned. And it passed. By a narrow margin, but it passed. Humanity will be recognized as an allied species. Vorak looked at Jisoo. There was significant opposition. Many feel that humans are too weak to be allies. But the story of what happened here, it changed minds, including yours? Taemin asked. Vorak was quiet for a moment. I still think humans are physically weak, but I have learned that there are many kinds of strength, and the kind they possess may be more valuable than our own. One of the other officers stepped forward. There's more, Your Majesty. Several of the vassal species have petitioned for similar status. They see what you're doing with humanity and they want the same recognition. Taemin nodded slowly. Then we grant it. The Empire has been built on domination for too long. Perhaps it's time to build something different. Something stronger. Some will resist, Vorak warned. There are many who believe in the old ways, who think strength only comes from conquest. Then they will learn, Taemin said. As I have learned. As you have learned. Over the following weeks, the changes began. Human colonies were granted independence. Trade agreements were renegotiated. Representatives were chosen to serve in the newly expanded Senate. Jisoo accepted the position of chief ambassador, though she insisted on maintaining her engineering credentials. I'm still fixing things, she told Mina. Just different kinds of things now. Mina had been offered a position as head of the new joint Human Valthari Shuttle Corps. She accepted enthusiastically. Someone needs to show these lizards how to really fly, she said with a grin. Sujin took command of the first mixed-species tactical unit, training Valthari and humans to work together. It's harder than fighting, she admitted. But more important, Daehyun established cultural exchange programs, bringing human students to study at Valthari universities and Valthari students to Earth. Understanding, he said, is the foundation of everything else. Not everyone was happy with the changes. There were protests on some Valthari worlds. Some human colonies were suspicious of the new relationship. Remembering centuries of subjugation, some vassal species felt the changes didn't go far enough. But slowly things shifted. Ideas that had seemed impossible became normal. Humans and Valthari working side by side, sharing knowledge, learning from each other. 5 years after the attack on the Apex Dominion, Jisoo stood on the observation deck of a new diplomatic station. This one was different from the warship. It was built specifically for peace, for meetings and negotiations. Half the design was Valthari, half was human. It orbited a neutral world, a symbol of the new era. Her hands rested on the railing. The scars were still there, layers upon layers of burned tissue. They would never fade. But she had stopped thinking of them as damage. They were a record. A history written in her own skin. They're beautiful, a voice said behind her. Jisoo turned to find Prince Haru. He wasn't a child anymore. At 12, he was nearly as tall as she was, his scales hardening into their adult form. In a few more years, he would be massive like his father, but his eyes were still kind. What are? Jisoo asked. Your scars, Haru said. He held out his own hands. On his palms were marks, fresh and pink. I got my first ones last month. In training. I was sparring with Sujin and I grabbed a heated training blade wrong. That must have hurt, Jisoo said. It did, Haru said, but I held on anyway. Because that's what you taught me, that sometimes holding on is the bravest thing you can do. He looked at his scars, then at hers. Mine will fade eventually. The doctors say Valthari heal differently than humans. In a few years, you won't be able to see them at all. That's good, Jisoo said. Is it? Haru asked. Your scars don't fade. You carry every choice you've ever made on your skin. Every time you held on when you could have let go. Don't you wish they would disappear? Jisoo looked down at her hands, turning them over slowly. The burn scars from the colony ship, the radiation burns from the Apex Dominion, smaller marks from a dozen other emergencies over the years. Her hands were a map of pain and choice. No, she said finally, I don't wish they would disappear. Because they remind me why I do this. They remind me that holding on matters, that the pain is worth it. Haru was quiet, thinking about this. Father says you've changed the Empire more than any warrior ever did. Your father is kind. No, he's right. The Empire was built on conquest, on taking and dominating, but you showed us a different way, a way to be strong by lifting others up instead of pushing them down. Haru looked out at the stars. Some of the older Valthari still don't understand it. They think we're getting soft. What do you think? Jisoo asked. I think we're getting better, Haru said. Stronger in ways that matter. My father ruled through fear. I want to rule through something else. What? Haru smiled. Through the kind of strength you showed me. The strength to hold on, to endure, to choose pain if it means others don't have to suffer. Jisoo felt tears in her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. You'll be a good emperor someday. I hope so, Haru said. Will you still be here to tell me when I'm doing it wrong? Probably, Jisoo said. I'm too stubborn to die. They stood together in silence, human and Valthari, looking out at the galaxy that was slowly, painfully, learning to be better than it was. Behind them, the diplomatic station hummed with activity. Human engineers worked alongside Valthari technicians. Diplomats from a dozen species negotiated treaties. Children from different worlds played together in the common areas, learning each other's languages, sharing each other's games. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still prejudices, still those who clung to the old ways. Change was slow and difficult and sometimes seemed impossible. But it was happening. Because 3 humans had walked into fire and refused to let go. Because a child had asked a simple question. Because an emperor had been willing to admit he was wrong. Later that evening, Jisoo attended a ceremony in the main hall. The Empire was awarding honors to those who had served in the new era of cooperation. Mina received a commendation for her work training pilots. Sujin was recognized for her tactical innovations. Daehyun was honored for his cultural programs. When they called Jisoo's name,